The knife slipped from my trembling hand, clattering against the tiled kitchen floor like a gunshot in the dead of night. Adam's eyes widened, not in fear, but in that soul-crushing mix of pity and regret I'd come to know too well. "Ian, it's over," he whispered, the words slicing deeper than any blade ever could. I didn't chase him when he grabbed his jacket and stormed out into the howling Chicago wind. Instead, I sank to my knees, the cold linoleum biting into my skin, and let the sobs come, raw, ugly things that echoed off the walls of our tiny Wicker Park apartment. 2 hours. That's all it took for the man I'd built my world around to unravel it thread by thread. But as the clock on the microwave blinked 11:47 p.m., mocking me with its relentless tick, I knew this wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something far more brutal. The truth. It started innocently enough, or at least that's what I told myself in the hazy glow of hindsight. Adam and I met 3 years ago at a dive bar on the edge of the Loop, the kind of place where the jukebox played Springsteen unironically and the air smelled like stale beer and forgotten dreams. I was 28, fresh out of a dead-end graphic design gig that paid just enough to keep the lights on in my shoebox studio. He was 30, a high school history teacher with a laugh that could disarm a room and eyes like the endless Midwest sky. Clear, but always threatening a storm. That night, I was nursing a whiskey sour, sketching aimless doodles on a napkin to drown out the ache of another failed Tinder date. He slid onto the stool next to me, all easy confidence in his faded Cubs hoodie, and nodded at my drawing, a half-formed skyline pierced by lightning. "That's Chicago after a blackout," he said, his voice warm like summer asphalt. "The kind that makes you feel alive." I looked up, caught off guard by how he saw right through the scribbles to the chaos in my head. We talked for hours about growing up queer in conservative suburbs, the sting of coming out to families that loved you but didn't quite get it, the quiet rebellion of stealing kisses in high school parking lots. By last call, we'd exchanged numbers, and just like that, the universe shifted. Our first real date was at the Art Institute, wandering the Impressionist wing until closing, his hand brushing mine as we lingered over Monet's water lilies. "They're like us," he murmured. All blurred edges and hidden depths. From there, it was a whirlwind. We moved in together after 6 months, turning that cramped apartment into a sanctuary of mismatched furniture and inside jokes. Adam taught me to cook his grandma's pierogi recipe, the dough sticky between our fingers as we laughed about flower fights that left us both dusted white like ghosts. I'd drag him to indie rock shows in Logan Square, where we'd sway in the crowd, his chin resting on my shoulder, whispering lyrics into my ear like secrets. Love, in those early days, felt invincible. A harmonized ballad we sang in tandem, notes blending perfectly under the city's relentless hum. But perfection's a lie we tell ourselves to sleep at night. Cracks started showing around the 1-year mark, subtle at first, like hairline fractures in glass. Adam's job wore on him. The kids at his school, a mix of inner-city dreamers and jaded teens, tested his patience daily. He'd come home with shadows under his eyes, collapsing onto the couch with a sigh that carried the weight of ungraded papers and cafeteria fights. "They don't see the world the way we do, Ian," he'd say, rubbing his temples. "It's like trying to teach hope to someone who's already given up." I'd hold him then, tracing circles on his back, promising we'd make it through. But I had my own battles. A freelance drought that left me staring at blank screens, wondering if my art was just pretty noise in a city that devoured creators. We'd argue over money, over whose turn it was to do dishes, but always circle back to each other. Apologies sealed with forehead kisses and "I love yous" murmured into the dark. The real storm brewed in the summer of our second year, when Adam's ex, Marcus, blew back into town like a bad habit. Marcus was the one who'd broken Adam's heart in college. A charming bastard with a trust fund and a wandering eye, the kind of guy who made you question your worth just by existing. Adam mentioned him offhand one evening, scrolling through his phone at the kitchen table. "He's in from LA for a conference. Wants to grab coffee." I forced a smile, ignoring the twist in my gut. "Old-time sake, huh? Just don't let him drag you to some overpriced rooftop bar." We laughed it off, but that night, as Adam showered, I peeked at his messages. jealousy whispering ugly things in my ear. Nothing incriminating, just polite banter. Still, the seed was planted. Coffee turned into drinks, drinks into a group dinner that somehow excluded me. Work emergency, Adam texted, his excuse as flimsy as wet paper. I paced the apartment, phone in hand, imagining them laughing over shared memories I couldn't touch. When he finally stumbled in at midnight, cheeks flushed from wine or something more, I confronted him. What's going on, Adam? Really? His face crumpled, defensive walls snapping up. It's nothing, Ian. Marcus is just familiar. You know how it is. We fought, words like daggers, accusations flying about trust and ghosts from the past. He swore it was platonic, that Marcus was a closed chapter, and in the heat of reconciliation, we clung to each other, bodies and hearts mending the rift. But doubt lingered, a low hum beneath our harmony. By fall, the betrayal I'd feared, and half expected, unfolded in slow motion. I found the texts first, buried in a thread labeled, Jim Buddy, innocent at the surface. Missed you at pickup today, from Marcus. Then Adam's reply, soon. Can't wait to feel that again. My stomach dropped like I'd been sucker punched. There were photos, blurry, but unmistakable. Adam's hand on Marcus's thigh in a dimly lit bar booth. Their faces too close, lips brushing in what could only be a stolen kiss. I confronted him that night, the evidence burning a hole in my palm as I thrust the phone at him. What the hell is this? My voice cracked, a stranger's in my throat. Adam's color drained, his mouth opening and closing like a fish on dry land. Ian, It was a mistake. One night, he was here, and I was drunk and... A mistake. I laughed, bitter and hollow. We've built everything on US, Adam. How do you mistake that for a quick fuck with your ex? He reached for me, but I recoiled, the air between us thick with the metallic tang of broken trust. He confessed in fragments. The loneliness from work, the way Marcus made him feel young and reckless again, the pull of old patterns he'd sworn to escape. I love you, he pleaded, tears carving tracks down his stubbled cheeks. This doesn't change that. But it did. Everything changed in that moment, the foundation we'd laid crumbling under the weight of his weakness. I threw him out or he left. It's all a blur now. Watching his taillights disappear into the sodium-lit streets, my chest a cavern of ache. That brings us to tonight, 2 hours ago, when the knife came into play. Not for harm, God no, just a pathetic prop in my unraveling. I'd been chopping onions for a solo dinner, tears blurring my vision, when the door buzzed. Adam, soaked from the drizzle turning to downpour, his eyes red-rimmed and desperate. We need to talk, he said, stepping inside without invitation, the scent of rain and regret clinging to him. We did talk, or shouted more like, pacing the living room like caged animals. He begged forgiveness, spilling apologies like cheap wine. How he'd ended things with Marcus for good, blocked his number, thrown himself into therapy at a queer center downtown. I was scared, Ian. Scared of how deep this goes. How much I need you. But I get it if you can't. Can't what? I snapped, the knife forgotten on the counter as fury boiled over. Can't forgive the guy who promised forever and delivered a footnote? You betrayed me, Adam. Not just with him, with us. My voice rose, cracking on the edges, and in a surge of rage, I grabbed the blade, waving it wildly. Not at him, never at him, but at the air, at the invisible wound he'd carved. That's when it slipped, skittering across the floor, and his whisper sealed the fracture. It's over. He left and I broke. But as the minutes ticked by, 11:50, 11:55, I couldn't let it end like this. Not without fighting for the harmony we'd lost. Grabbing my keys, I bolted into the storm, the wind whipping my hoodie like accusatory fingers. Chicago streets were alive with the night's underbelly. Cabs honking, drunks stumbling from bars, the distant wail of an L train rattling overhead. I ran toward the lakefront, knowing that's where he'd go. His thinking spot, the bench by Oak Street Beach where we'd carved our initials into the wood one starry August night. The rain pelted my face, mixing with hot tears, my lungs burning as I splashed through puddles deep as regrets. 1 hour in, and the city blurred into a watercolor of neon and shadow. Why him? Why now? The questions looped, a tormenting refrain. I'd always been the steady one, the planner, the guy who believed love was a choice renewed daily. Adam was the dreamer, the one who made me feel seen, but his impulses, those reckless dives into emotion, had nearly drowned us both. I spotted him at 12:30, silhouetted against the churning black waves, shoulders hunched on that damn bench. The initials, I, glistened wetly under the lamp post, a mocking testament. He didn't hear me approach over the gale, so I called his name, voice raw from the run. Adam. He turned, startled, his face a map of anguish. Ian? What are you? Go home. You're gonna catch your death out here. But he stood, arms opening instinctively before dropping, as if afraid to hope. I can't, I gasped, closing the distance until we were inches apart, the rain forging a veil between us. Not like this, not without saying. I don't know if I can forgive you, not yet, but I miss the us we were, the harmony, and God help me, I still love you. His breath hitched, a sob escaping as he searched my eyes. I don't deserve that. I wrecked it, Ian. For what? A cheap thrill? I'm so sorry. The words hung there, vulnerable and true, stripped bare by the storm. In that suspended moment, thunder rumbling like a distant drum, I saw the boy he'd been. The one who'd taught me hope wasn't naive, just brave. I stepped closer, our hands finding each other, fingers interlacing like puzzle pieces long separated. No grand declarations, no cinematic kiss under the lightning. Just us, two flawed hearts harmonizing again. Tentative notes in a ballad rewritten. Then earn it, I said softly, pulling him into an embrace that soaked us both deeper. Start now, one day at a time. We walked back in silence, arms linked against the wind, the city unfolding around us like a promise. By 1:47 a.m., we were home, dripping, exhausted, but together. Not fixed, not perfect, but human. And in the quiet that followed, as we peeled off wet clothes and crawled under the covers, I realized the journey wasn't about pain's end, but discovery's dawn. Love, real love, isn't a straight line from hurt to happily ever after. It's the messy loop, the 2-hour tempests that force you to choose. Walk away, or harmonize through the chaos. As sleep claimed us, his head on my chest, I whispered into the dark, "We're gonna make it." And for the first time that night, I believed it. Not because it was easy, but because it was ours.